Welcome and welcome to Module 2, Lesson 5. Now, last lesson, we did a little bit of work around the most dominant people in your life and what the values they have taught you. This one, we're going to just delve a little bit differently into the same type of thing, but in the stages of development. So we talked about mostly that earlier stage of development last session. So mostly up really until the age of 12, probably before high school, hopefully. That's the people that you've sort of generated in that historical or in those most dominant people. It might not be, but they're the ones that I was kind of hoping you would have targeted into. But either way, this next one is we're going to look at your teenage years, because that is a very important stage of development. I'm going to explain why. So let's get into it. So what you're going to learn in this session is we're going to go through that stage of development. We're going to look at Erik Erikson's stage of development, psychosocial stage of development, but we're also going to think about how you have grown constantly throughout your life and how you've integrated the constant learning and how that's starting to shift the way you view yourself. So remember, this is all about self-image and self-identity. So first of all, I just want to touch a little bit about only a little bit, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, but about the identity versus confusion, which is a stage of development that we go through. So just quickly on that. So Erik Erikson, he's a psychologist, very well renowned in my world, and he does these stages of development. And one of them is that stage of development roughly from 13, 12 through to about 18, 19, 20, depends on your level of maturity and how long that stage of development goes for. And your job during that period of time is to figure out who you are, what you want, where you want to go, what does life mean for you. You really do start to question your parents and the values that have been gifted to you in this period of time. And it's perfect thing for you to be doing, which is why you see all that teenage and parent angst during this period of time, because their job is to go and experiment. Their job is to figure out who they are, what they believe separate to their parents and society and life in general. So it is their actual job. And you will find that in that stage of development, their peers and their friendships become very, very important to them. And that's where they start to form their identity off their peers, and they try on different roles as well to sort of experiment a little bit about who they are and what they believe. So it's a very big stage of development. So this next exercise that I want you to do is actually all around this. So we're going to go through, and because we're constantly looking at this, we want you to go through and think about the people in your world, your personality traits, your your description of yourself, your society's description of you, your intellectual description of yourself, your family's description of yourself. So I want you to go into a little bit more detail, but I really want you to think about it from that teenage point of view. So, because you would have formed some pretty significant belief systems, because that's your job during that period, about yourself. And they might be different now, which is fine. That's what we're going to sort of take up in self-esteem. But I really do want you to tap into your teenage years from roughly 12 to about roughly 20-ish, around that period. You'll know what I'm talking about when you're doing it. You'll know that period that I'm talking about, that angsty period where you're figuring it all out. And I want you to think about these traits, the personality traits you had back then, the physical description of yourself, were you sort of a surfer dude, were you the intellectual one, were you the popular one, were you the nerdy one? Like what were the roles that you took on? What were the hats you tried on? What was the groups that you spent most of your time with, the cliques they call them at school? What was going on during that period? And what did you believe about yourself during schooling years? Did you think you were intelligent? Did you think you were struggling? Did you think it was all hard work, never succeeded, there's no mastery there, whatever it might be? And what was your family's description of you during that period? That is important, because you will find a lot of belief systems about ourselves now are actually derived from that block of time, because it's such a transient period and it's such an important period of time for us. So go back, put that teenage hat on, try and get yourself into that state and place, and think about the memories and the angst that you had, and the friendships that you had, and the loves that you had, and the fights that you had, and the experimenting that you did. And try and think about these questions from that historical viewpoint. And then just have a little bit of think about which one of those do you still hold true, or which one of those do you actually think, actually that isn't true anymore. I'm not a teenager. I'm a grown woman or a grown man. So go and have a think and really do challenge which ones don't match you now that perhaps you're still holding on to. A key, like I mentioned in last, a big key for this is when you see big emotions in interactions and fights, and particularly with your significant others, check, is that emotion really associated with this interaction right now? Or is it actually really about something that happened in your past and your belief systems that you've set up in your past that you've brought to this situation? Have a think about it. I guarantee it is. So remember to be kinder to yourself than anybody else can be during this period, because we're supposed to be having fun, guys. We're supposed to be having fun. Are we having fun yet? I hope so. So I will see you in lesson 6, and then we're nearly finished for this module.